How do you gain insights on your competitors and discover their best practices?
Black and white love, come on, baby. Love, come on, baby. Black and white, come on, baby. Love, come on, baby.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Sunday Drivers MX-5 Cup. We are at round 1 here at Silverstone National today alongside me, Jack Oliphant, in the SRW commentary booth. I have the ever popular Jack Werrell. Welcome, Jack, and it's going to be a good night. You are experiencing this sort of in this series, aren't you? And it's going to be heating up nicely.
Yeah, I hope so. I know the MX-5s never fail to deliver. Last season, we also came to the Silverstone National Circuit, in which we saw Andrew Lovesie and Dan Mould, their Simulation Racing League's teammates at the time. They were battling tooth and nail, lap after lap after lap, for the lead, bear in mind, with the championship up for grabs. And if teammates are battling that close on the closing stages of the season for championship points, what's it going to be like here tonight when this is the first time the championship has been let loose once again in 2021? Points are up for grabs. The championship is definitely going to be heating up with a raft of new drivers. It's going to be one hell of a night.
It is indeed, yeah. We're looking forward to it. Obviously, I am new to the series, but MX-5 racing, no matter where we are, who's involved, what track it's on, or anything like that, it's always really exciting. One Make series is straight up my street, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing how these guys crack on. Obviously, we've got a whole host of drivers that you've noted already, Jack, and I think we'll be able to have a chat through a few of them, because we've got about 40 cars out here today.
Yeah, the grid is definitely not small at all. I know we've always had some really big grids in the MX-5s. Tonight is one of the biggest grids I've ever seen in an MX-5 race. We're pushing on 44 drivers, so a hell of a lot of drivers out there, a hell of a lot of talent ready to be put to work out on the Silverstone National Circuit. We've got returning drivers. Dan Mould, he has recently experienced a team change from SRL to Ignium Motorsport. We've of course got our very own Chaz Draycott, made a one-time appearance last season, the last time out at Alton Park for Sancho Simsport, the number 30 machine you can see there in the pit lane. He is returning for the full season this time, currently in 6th place in practice, so keep an eye on him. He's definitely great in a commentary box, and it looks like he's even better in a car. We've got Roberto Garcia Campos, new driver to the championship. I don't recognize the name from last season, and he's already put it on what would be provisional pole position in this practice session. And we've got so many returning drivers. Neil Armstrong back behind the wheel, Matt Tempest, who else have we got? Enrico Puttenstein, Pedro Marimon, so lots of returning drivers. And it just shows no matter what you do to this championship, you can change the calendar, change the size of the grid, change anything, and it will always come back to some great door-to-door action. Yeah,
indeed. Apologies if somebody's saying that to speak up or to turn the volume up for Jack. I will do that now, and just let me know, because obviously we are streaming slightly differently. But you're right, and Silverstone National is a perfect track for these cars, really, isn't it, Jack? Because it's the perfect opportunity to get nice close racing right at the start of the championship. You know, you're separated by tenths of a second, hundredths of a second even, between the likes of first and even 10th or 20th place, aren't we? So what we're sort of in store for tonight is going to be absolutely cracking. We're on a bit of a practice at the moment, but do you want to give everybody a bit of a rundown on how the night's going to be looking?
Yeah, so tonight we've got a very similar format to last season. We were currently in a 50-minute practice session, so 50 minutes of pure practice for all of these guys. They can choose to use all of it, they can choose to use none of it, and a bit in the middle. We've seen lots of on-track action already. And just as we're going into the closing stages, we've got about 11 minutes left of this session. We've got a 10-minute qualifying, so not much time to get out there, get a lap in, push the limit, and you've then got to sort of square yourself up for the race, because only 10 minutes, one mistake, that's 1 minute down the drain, and that's a lap completely ruined. So you've got to make sure you nail your laps in 10 minutes, and then a 26-lap race. So by all accounts, that can be quite a long race, but when it's a 1 minute 6, 1 minute 7 lap time, it's not exactly the longest race in the world. And you mentioned that we're going to end up with some really close racing purely because of the nature of the circuit, and I couldn't agree more. 1 minute 6, 1 minute 7 lap times, like I mentioned, and you said everyone is separated by very small margins. The top 39 drivers separated by 1 second. So if we didn't see close racing last season, we're definitely going to see it tonight. And going off last season, of course, as well, there was a fair bit of contact, but a lot of the drivers were really pushing the limits, and that shows that this car, you can push it to a certain point and it really will start to bite. So something to bear in mind tonight as well. While all of these drivers have got experience of varying degrees, it might show tonight who's got the extra couple of hours, the couple of days, the couple of races behind the wheel of these MX-5s, because they're much of a muchness. They will race very closely. You start to overdrive them, and that will just throw the race out the window.
Yeah, it's quite a common mistake, isn't it, to sort of almost overdrive these MX-5s, get the back end a little bit too loose, because an MX-5 does like to have a little bit of a looser rear end, doesn't it? It's a car that you do like to chuck into the corners, but the best drivers are still the ones that sort of keep that under control. They put one steering input, you know, they're good with the throttle and the brake as well. it's very important to make sure that, as you said, you're not overdriving, you're not taking the life out of the rear tyres, because it's a long race for an MX-5, really, isn't it? It's easy to sort of chew at the rear tyres.
Yeah, that's something that we're going to have to bear in mind as well. There's so much to think about in most races, but even more so in the Sunday Drivers MX-5 Cup, because you've got to remember everybody's on a very similar setup, and they've all got the same piece of kit to work with. I think they've just got about 150 horsepower, about 180 brake torque as well. So nothing like groundbreaking, not major figures. But when you're all on the same grid with 44 drivers, you're going to be pushing the life out of that car. If you wear through your tyres in the first half of the race, that's really going to drop you back into the clutches of everybody behind. You make a mistake at the start, and you have got a freight train of cars to let by. So you've got to make sure, get away from the line cleanly, try and keep it clean for the first 10-ish laps. And then at that point, I think the drivers will finally start to be able to think about, right, now I'm here, what am I going to do? Am I going to push for the overtake? Am I going to sit behind? It's really all up in the air until we end up about halfway through the race.
Yeah, slipstream plays a major factor in that, though, doesn't it? I mean, obviously, these cars, like you said, they're all perfectly matched apart from setup. But the slipstream, these MX-5s are like punching a brick through a wall, aren't they, really? They punch a huge hole of air that drivers can sort of really use, especially down towards Brooklands and Luffield and stuff like that, to make sure that they're up the inside. You know, they're going to try for those overtakes late on the brakes and all that sort of thing. So, although they are sort of perfectly matched in terms of machinery, they can use aerodynamics to their advantage.
Yeah, and you look at the car and you don't think, well, it's not massively aerodynamic. It is a very, very small car. Looking at it when it's amongst a grid of Mazda MX-5s, they all look quite sizable. But when you put it against something like the Volkswagen Jetta, for example, also on the iRacing service, you realise just how small the car is. So we will see some 4, maybe 5 wide action tonight. And if you're tucked in behind a train of cars, you're going to be so much quicker. You might be saving a little bit of fuel as well. So it's all about track position, I think. Being at the front, while it's great, being in the lead, yeah, that's a lot to shout about. But you're going to be giving such a benefit to everyone behind you. You've got to try and time your strategy perfectly. If you're in second going onto the final lap, or you're in first going onto the final lap, sorry, you probably won't be when you cross the line, because like you say, you've got the slipstream, you've got the straights, and you've got the stadium section of the circuit as well. So lots of opportunities for so many different overtaking opportunities as well. You can get the cutback if you like, you can be later on the brakes, you've got the slipstream. We're not going to be bored tonight.
We're not indeed, and it reminds me of, if anybody watches in the sort of British touring cars, you may be familiar with a circuit called Thruxton in the UK, the fastest UK circuit as it happens, and there was a lovely sort of classic mini race there a couple of years ago that I remember watching, and basically they would just follow each other in a nice line for almost 20 laps or so, and right on the final lap of the race, everyone wanted to be in second place because they knew that slipstream was going to be the reason why somebody would end up winning that race. So it's going to be a similar-ish theme tonight, I imagine, unless obviously someone's confident enough that they, even in clean air, have that pace to get ahead of everybody else, and maybe a second gap, which would be absolutely massive, obviously, around such a short circuit. It's going to be very interesting. I'm very much looking forward to it. It's a series that, being in the SRW sort of roster of commentators, always gets picked up as one of the best race series in the roster that we cover in terms of actual door-to-door action. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how it pans out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the British Touring Car Championship and the Minis. Speaking of the British Touring Car Championship, the driving standards tend to follow. But while everybody tries to be as clean, as respectful as possible, 9 times out of 10, if there's a Mazda at the end of the race with a wing mirror still on it, they haven't done Sunday Drivers MX-5 properly, because you can guarantee at pretty much all points there will be 2, maybe 3 wide, and going into maybe Copse Corner and heading into Brooklands, we could end up seeing some 4 wide action, which will start to take its strain on the drivers as well. So you've got to think, it's, like you say, it's quite a long race for an MX-5, not bordering on endurance, but purely because it's such a short track, you've got to be on it all the time. There's very little time to find, because a lot of the circuit's flat out. You can start to gain a little bit on the brakes, but you've also got the other drivers to think about. You've got to be so self-aware, and you've got to make sure you know what's happening on your surroundings. You've got to manage the tyres, everything. It's going to be an endurance on the drivers as well. The concentration is going to be through the roof, and into the final sort of 5 laps, that's when you'll start to see how this race has taken its toll on some of the drivers.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'm potentially going to just have a quick look and see if we can get an onboard of the lap that we are, of course, talking about for such a long amount of time. And as we're coming down the start-finish national straight here, obviously not using the F1 wing, we go into Cops nice and late on the apex there and sort of flushing it nicely out wide. There is a ping for track limits if you go too far, though, so you want to make sure you're okay with that one. Put it back to the right-hand side, but remember, we're not going on the GP loop, so as you enter Maggots, make sure you're keeping it to the right. Big bump on the inside there. Make sure you don't run too wide there, as it looks like Henrico does just a little bit too much probably, and it's all about the run down here. That's probably the most important corner of the entire lap, because you are such a long straight now. It's all flat out as well as we go towards Brooklands and Luffield. Go all the way to the right, and they're abusing that sort of track limits if they can. A nice late apex. He's hooking it up nicely there with with another MX-5 and the kitty litter. Back to the middle of the track if you can, and it's all a choice of lines here. Some people like to V it. That's a more high-powered line. And with a 1.8 litre engine, the MX-5s tend to prefer a tighter momentum-based line around there to try and get the power on as early as possible. Going through the final corner then, and it's back onto the start-finish straight, and that is a very short lap that we'll be racing today here at Silverstone National.
Absolutely, a very clean lap from Henrico Puttenstein, bar the slight mistake going on to the Wellington straight. And like you say, that is one of the most important corners. Heading into Maggots, you've got to make sure you're as late on the brake as possible, but not too late, because if you start to wash wide, that is going to carry some of that momentum through the corner. You really want the momentum coming out of the corner so you can almost slingshot yourself onto the straight. If you go a little too hot on the way in, you might wash wide, and 2 mile an hour loss at the start of the straight could be 10 mile an hour loss at the end of the straight. And we know what these cars are like. You said that with the 1.8 litre engine, they don't produce massive amounts of power, and you've got to make sure it's all about momentum. You're as smooth on the controls as possible. You make sure you feed in the throttle as smoothly as possible. If you can put your foot to the floor, do it. Just make sure, if you do it, you don't take your foot off again, much like the famous Jackie Stewart saying, funnily enough. But these cars, they almost remind me of the Citroen C1 club racing series that we've got here in the UK. It's a very, very club based, so not massive budgets. So there's very little to do in regards to setup. It's all about momentum. They haven't got the most amount of power in the world, so you've got to make sure you are so careful on the controls. And we're seeing a lot of the drivers maybe start to abuse the controls a little bit. Lots of Formula Drift action throughout the evening, and we've seen a lot of it in practice, and we're not even at qualifying yet. We've got 2 minutes till the session swaps over, so we're going to have 2 minutes of sideways action now, and then another 10, and then another 26 laps of it. So it's going to be, we're going to struggle to try and catch a breath this evening.
We are indeed, but that's exactly the kind of racing we like to hear about, isn't it? I mean, as I said, if it's not music to your ears when you say that, you know, the racing is basically door-to-door for the entire thing, then what are you watching racing for, to be honest? We've got 44 cars, and it's going to be action-packed all the way through, just like Jack says. And again, like Jack says, we only have just under 2 minutes now, about a minute and a half to go of this practice session. You can see that Roberto Garcia Campos is still top of the pile. Victor Oliveira, who hasn't actually been out for quite a while, he set his pace a fair old while ago. He's in second place at the moment. Patrick Borst in third. Michael Ellett as well in Simulations Racing Leagues as well. He's in fourth. And top 5 is being rounded out currently by Sander Borst. So a couple of drivers there that you're going to be wanting to keep an eye out on. And obviously those of you who are familiar with the series last year will be keeping an eye on your own personal favourites as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, last year last year in theory, I was going to say last season, but yeah, it was last year. You start to come up with almost predictions on what's going to happen. And in the final round of the season, we saw Dan Mould and Chaz Draycott battle it out door to door. They were so even on pace, and they're living up to it this season as the pit exit cone goes flying at the scenery. You've got Chaz Draycott posting a 1 minute 6.76 as the fastest lap in the session, or his fastest lap in the session. Dan Mould, just behind him, has posted a 1 minute 6.79, so 300ths separating last season's sparring partners, and I'm sure we're going to see something of the like in the race, so keep an eye on those two. We've also got Andrew Lovesie. He has remained at Simulation Racing Leagues. He's currently in 6th place, or he's currently in the pit lane as the checkered flag man goes absolutely mental because he's decided that it is time to swap the session over. So keep an eye on Andy Lovesie. Louis Correa as well for Fast Cars Go Bang. pretty much all of the H20 esports cars as well. So lots of talent, and I'm sure we're going to see all of it put on display through qualifying and then into the 26 lap race.
I can't wait, to be honest. Yeah, 10 minutes of qualifying about to come underway, and we'll be able to try and show you as everybody piles out the pits. Here we go. The bun fight has started, Jack. Everybody trying to vie for that track position. 45 cars. I mean, I've raced on the Silverstone National in real life a couple of times, and I can never say once, oh, it's a bit quiet on here, there's no traffic. And I've never raced with 45 of the cars on circuit with me, so it's going to be a bit of a battle to try and get your fast lap time. Obviously, you want to be slightly hunkered up behind one or two other cars to get that really nice slipstream, to get that couple of miles an hour extra that maybe you wouldn't if you were in clean air. But also, you don't want to be hampered, do you? If they make a mistake, you want to have enough time to react to that. You don't want to ruin your lap. So 10 minutes really isn't a long time, although it sort of pretty much translates to about 8 flying laps. They can be scuppered very easily.
Yeah, it's so difficult to find a clear piece of track. You've almost got to find half a second to a second behind a car you know you're the same pace as. So if I were Dan Mould or Ches Dracar, I would be trying to get behind the other just because you know you're so close on pace. And if you can get there, you can get behind. You'll have a bit of draft assistance. You shouldn't be held up, but you're probably going to get 1 clean lap in, 2 clean laps if you're lucky. The rest of it is just going to be carving your way through traffic or moving out the way of traffic, because you've got to remember, as much as you want to get a lap in, whether it be a banker lap or the fastest lap, there's going to be carnage. As you can see, one of the Ignium Motorsport cars sideways in the middle of the road. You've got to make sure you manage the traffic logically. If they're quicker than you, as much as you want to carry on and set your time, you're going to have to let them by.
Yeah, indeed. As you see a couple of people already pushing the limits of the MX-5s going round cops, and they're already going 4 wide as they go towards Maggots and Beckett's. I'm sure this is probably just them trying to find an inch or two of room, but there really isn't that many inches of room out there to be had. And it does remind me, me and Jack are both big British touring car fans, so we will probably refer to that quite a lot when we go to UK circuits. But it does remind me, Jack, that of these sort of British touring cars qualifying, isn't it? You're almost using your teammates as sort of to push you along, although pushing a cone along probably is another tactic they're going for here.
Yeah, somebody clearly not happy with that, kind of depositing it in the middle of the Wellington Straight. And yeah, like you say, if you have a teammate and you can work together, that is going to give you such an advantage. As Dan Mould goes to the top of the times, provisionally, of course, with a 106.56 for Ignium Motorsport. He's only just recently swapped to Ignium Motorsport. I did it during the Christmas period, and it's a great outing for him so far. And just looking at the times, we were saying that having a teammate is incredibly valuable. For example, you look at P4, P5, and P6, they're all Simtech racing cars, and I bet you any money they've worked together throughout the qualifying session.
Yeah, they must have done. I think it's, as I said, in the touring cars, it's decided well in advance of qualifying that one car will tow the other car around for 3 laps, and then they'll swap over for the final 3 laps. Obviously, something that these guys don't have to come into contact with is the fact that they keep the same tyres on, as it's only a 10-minute session, and the MX-5s will go for that long. But it's certainly, you know, there's tactics to play. As you said, it's all about the sort of the team game, really. And how best to attack that as a team to make sure you're scoring the most amount of points.
Yeah, it's definitely a team sport, and this series just amplifies that. You've got to make sure you've got a teammate to help you, whether it's during the race, if you've got a teammate playing rear gunner, making sure that somebody behind isn't going to catch you, or they're helping each other, they're pushing each other around the circuit. Chas Draycott goes up into P2. So Dan Mould, Chas Draycott, sparring partners from last season, definitely showing they haven't lost anything over the Christmas period. Chas posting a 1:06.827. Still quite the margin off provisional pole as Patrick Borst just sneaks in front of him. Well, I say just, he's almost got provisional pole with that one. He's only, what, a 100th away from Dan Mould in pole position, and then a 1/4 of a second back is Chas Draycott. So there's evidently time there. It's just whether he can find it, and Chas is slightly being held up by traffic now as more drivers are starting to post times up on the boards. It's Sander Borst now in provisional P3. So in the space of, what, 30 seconds, Chas has gone from P2 to P5, or P2 to P4, pardon me, purely because he just can't get a clean lap in.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, Patrick Borst and Sander Borst, 2nd and 3rd. So the iRacing Netherlands teammates are certainly putting in a good show at the moment. Although Sander Borst on my screen, it doesn't actually say he's even completed the lap. So that'd be very impressive if he posts a lap time of 1 minute 6.8. But we are starting to see, Chaz Draycott, there you go, he's back up to second place. We are starting to see the flying lap times that we saw in practice already being implemented into qualifying, and we're not even halfway through. We're just about to hit the halfway stage, 5 minutes gone. And at the moment, 24 out of the 45 drivers have set a lap time. But that's another thing to note, isn't it, Jack? They're not all... The drivers will probably end up setting a lap time, because if you get an off track, the lap time is completely eradicated, isn't it? And if you get if you have a bump with another driver, the lap time gets eradicated. So we might actually see absolutely everyone get their lap times in.
Yeah, that is something to bear in mind as well. And like you say, the track limits, they're not massively strict around here. As soon as you start to push them a little too far, then of course you will get that 1x. And if you get a little too sideways, you will pick up maybe 2 incident points for a loss of control. And if you hit a curb slightly too hard, you can pick up a 0x. You saw there Chaz Draycott trying to let by Dan Mould. So last season, they were trying to work together. And now in qualifying, Chaz has done his best to try and get behind Dan Mould. And I think, yeah, he's gone into the pit lane, realizing that maybe he isn't going to be on for a quicker lap this time by. Only 4 minutes of the session remain, so he's got to make sure he gets into the pit lane, possibly put a fresh set of boots on that car to see whether he can find any more time. He's got a bit of time to make up. Xavier Lopez heads up into provisional P4. You can see there the H20 Esports car continuing on for another lap, and you've got to make sure you get these clean laps in. As soon as everybody's up to pace, it becomes slightly easier. However, that doesn't account for people maybe slightly overdriving the car. Mistakes can happen, and like you say, just as you can see one of the Simtech cars heading towards the scenery, a little mistake like that can cost you a huge lap. As we've got somebody on provisional pole position, that's Sander Borst, from iRacing Netherlands, at a 1 minute 6.425. Almost over 1.5 tenths clear of Dan Mould. Where's he found that time?
Yeah, it's an absolutely mammoth amount of time that he's been hiding in his back pocket there from Sander Borst. He'll be very pleased with it. Patrick Borst is actually splitting Dan Mould and Chaz Draycott as well in third place. The iRacing Netherlands team have clearly done their practice over the Christmas period. As we're looking at the moment, Javier Lopez in the H20 Esports, he's got Rene Var as well just ahead of him in the, again, H20 Esports racing team. As Lopez comes across the line, can he improve and maybe crack the top 5? Not just yet, but more and more times are being posted on the board. We've got 36 out of the 44 cars currently have a qualifying position.
Yeah, so for the moment, the times are starting to creep in. You can see the times are starting to come up as well. We've got Ashley Gaffale posting himself up into P12, pardon me. Joseph Keveney for Simtech Racing Silver has put in his fastest lap time of the session, putting him in P14. Lots of tyre smoke through Maggot, so I'm not sure what's happened there. Clearly someone not 100% happy with the setup on the car. You can see Luis Correa posting a green lap time as well, so that means that's his personal best in the session. So while this 10-minute qualifying session, isn't exactly the longest, it enforces that drivers are going to drive as quickly as possible, push the limits. Mistakes can come, but when the lap comes to you as well, you can end up very well off for the race. But we know that starting at the front of the grid, you have got all that pressure behind you. It's almost going to be very easy to make a mistake in towards turn 1.
Yeah, you've got cold tyres, everybody has to contend with that obviously, but then you've got the draft from behind for those drivers who have also got a good clean start, and we'll be hoping to sort of dive into the likes of Brooklands and Luffield and get across into Cops first as well. So you will, if you qualify in pole, don't think it's going to be an easy ride, because it's certainly going to be anything but James Austin currently the last of the top 5 sitters, and is in a good stead, lining up for another lap. And I'd just like to say as well, Harry Bowen, there's a few others as well. I'm a sucker for a funny team name, and Harry Bowen is part of the Fast Cars Go Bang team, and I'm quite a fan of that, so fair play.
Yeah, Fast Cars Go Bang, of course, they were one of the entries into last season as well. Mixed bag of results. They had some very good races throughout. There were some very poor races for them as well. But now, look, we do have a brand new provisional pole sitter. Roberto Garcia Campos for Hispania Racing has posted a 1 minute 6.115. Incredibly quick, over 3 tenths quicker than Sander Borst. So he's really found some pace, really hooked up the lap. And I thought a 106 was quick, and he's knocking on the door of a 105.
Yeah, it's almost embarrassing compared to the amount of laps that I've done around here at Silverstone and not been able to get anywhere near these lap times. So there's stunning driving here at the moment from Roberto. Sander Borst, what can he do? He's currently out there trying to warm up his tyres to maybe improve on that lap time and get himself within a couple of tenths of Roberto, if not getting himself into the 105s. But I reckon if you said to most of this grid, if you want pole position, you're going to have to go and get a 105, they probably would not really be very happy with that, because I'm sure it's probably not what they were having in mind. They probably thought they were quite happy with a mid 106, which is still a decent lap time, but it's nowhere near Roberto's benchmark at the moment.
No, not at all. He has really put that time in. As I think that's Dan Mould off the road and possibly into the wall as well. He had a huge moment, and he was definitely pushing, because I think that was the last lap that he was going to get in the session, as the checkered flag is being waved as we speak. So all of the drivers still on a lap will have the chance to complete that lap. But anybody that crosses the line from now, that is their qualifying session over. And sadly, yeah, that rings true for Dan Mould. Currently in provisional P3, possibly still under pressure from everybody else behind. We've still got Patrick Borst out on circuit. Chaz Draker also out on circuit. We're looking at Sander Borst. Of course, he was the previous pole sitter, taken off that pedestal from Roberto Garcia Campos, who was massively he's just put a huge gap in between himself and P2, and now Sander Borst has decided, yep, this isn't his lap. I'm not sure whether he knows that the session is over, whether he's just trying to enter the pit lane safely. Here is the second of the Borsts, Patrick Borst, charging towards the line now. Does he improve upon his time? No, he doesn't. That's a 107.161. That's Chaz Draker. Maybe, I'm hoping, just trying to get in a nice position for some photos, or he's had quite the off and he's ended up in the barrier.
Yeah, not ideal for him, but we have got a whole host of cars still currently lapping. In fact, one of the fears that I had before about the drivers not being able to get any kind of lap time in, pretty much everybody who has tried to get a lap time in has succeeded. We've got Michael Kamerick, who hasn't been able to get a lap time in, so he will be starting from the back of the grid. But we'll be able to give you a rundown on the entire grid order as and when it is available to us. I think we're just relating on Martin at the moment to make sure he gets across the line so he can finish qualifying. Oh, there we go. I think it spawned him back anyway.
Yeah, so we will have the grid available to us in a few moments' time. So here we go. Roberto Garcia Campos, the number 19 machine, has put it on the front row of the grid by 3/10, so 106.115 for the pole sitter. Sander Borst, like I say, 3/10 back alongside. Then it's Dan Mould and Patrick Borst. Chaz Draycott lines up in 5th with Jamie Austin alongside. Rene Ware in 7th with Louis Correa in 8th. Ashley Gaffale has Xavier Lopez for company on row 5. Peter Reed and Bram Klaas round out your top 12. We should have a few more drivers available to us. There is Jordan Svetanov, 8/10 back from the pole sitter. Neil Armstrong, Michael Ellitz. Then it's Joseph Cavani, Andrew Lovesie, Matt Tempest, Henrico Puttenstein, Harry Bowen rounds out your top 20. Scotty Angelo, Ben Hicks, Kalle Cavisto, the Finn in 23rd. I didn't see who was in 24th. Mark Armstrong in 25th. Pedro Baramon Cladera in 26th. Then it's Jason Cuara, Stephen Orell, Robert van den Heuvel, Victor Oliveira, John Brown, Sander Ware, David Geddes, returning driver from season 1, season 2, pardon me, Sebastian Hain, Martin Penerero, and Amanullah Bacchus in 36th. Do we have any more drivers? We just have a couple more rows to go. Timo Paya, Sven Dalemans, Alvaro Rodriguez, then it's Tyler Reeves, Arturo De Villa, Mackenzie Mann, Jean-Louis Morget, and Michael Kamerick round out the 44 drivers on round 1 of the Sunday Drivers MX-5 Cup.
Yeah, and the race is about to be getting underway. Roberto Garcia and pretty much everybody else is just about lined up and ready to go. We're just waiting on one or two others before we get the green lights. But Jack, it's gonna be exciting, like you said. There'll be door-to-door action all the way through, and Silverstone National never ceases to disappoint. I'm looking forward to this one. 26 laps of racing. Here we go.
Yeah, so we are about to go racing for the first time in 2021. You can hear the revs rising, and I'm sure we will end up with some lights on our screen in just a few moments' time. You can see the lights up on the top of your screen. 1 light, 2 light, 3, 4, and 5. The revs are rising, and for 2021, we're away for the Sunday Drivers MX-5 Cup. It's Roberto Garcia getting a great start. Lots of chopping and changing in the background. That was Chaz Draycott moving over to the left-hand side, trying to defend his position. He's under pressure from one of the H20 cars. You can see both the iRacing Netherlands cars looking to make a move as well. Dan Mould separates the teammates. There's been a big old incident in the background. You can see drivers really dropping back. Scotty Angelo, one of the drivers involved, but for the moment, up at the front, it's looking very, very tame. However, Chaz Draycott is only going backwards. He's lost a position already to Rene Ware, and he's under pressure from another one of the fast cars go bang. And you can see the H20 cars are really starting to herd up on his tail end.
Yeah, Rene Ware has had a good start. Chaz has managed to just about get back ahead of him, though. There is a whole host of cars that have been involved in the incident. You're right, Scott Angelo, Henrik Puttenstein as well. James Austin has been involved, but at the moment we're going to be focusing on this lot because Rene Ware and Louis Correa are going to be going into Brooklyn side by side potentially. No, Rene just about holding on to the brakes long enough and late enough to complete that position, but Chaz is putting Patrick Borst under an enormous amount of pressure.
Yeah, he's really starting to apply the pressure. He's gone from defence to aggression at this point. He's really looking to make a move on the number 41 machine, heading up towards the line to tick lap 1 in the books already. 25 laps remaining. You can see Rene Ware under pressure from Louis Correa in the Fast Cars Go Bang machine. Louis looking to the inside on the way up to Copse Corner. Not a massive braking zone. He tucks back into the draft, realising the move's not on. However, just in front, you can see Chaz really hot on the heels of Patrick Borst, right on the coattails, looking to get that move done. You can see as well, that was Louis Correa running slightly wide, pushing the limits already, and it's just a herd of MX-5s in the background. This is Dan Mould now trying to promote himself up into P2, but he's compromised his line on the way in. That has allowed Patrick Borst to have a little look up the inside. Chaz Draycott really using all the track and a little bit more there, so maybe slightly sideways. Has that given him a good run onto the straight? He does have the draft assistance from the 3 cars in front. He's alongside Patrick Borst now. He does have the inside line heading in towards the left-hander, who is later on the brakes. Chaz Draycott is later on the brakes. Look at that, up the inside, promoting himself up into P4. Just as he does that, Dan Mould gets up into P2, and now look, all of this battling has allowed Roberto Garcia to slowly start to extend his lead margin, 1 second clear after 3 laps of racing.
Yeah, Roberto is looking in his rearview mirrors and laughing right now because he is away with the fairies in terms of MX-5 gaps around Silverstone National. There is still a little bit of a draft effectiveness when you're only a second away, but it's nowhere near as much as the likes of Dan Mould, Sander Borst, Chaz Draycott and Patrick Borst and pretty much the rest of the field will be experiencing between each other. So look out, because there's going to be even more action as we're going to have another look at Rene Ware and Louis Correa, who's rekindling this little battle. We'll have a look at a few incidents in a minute, but we can't take our eyes away as Rene Ware is still going on the defensive, but on the cutback comes Louis Correa around and down onto the back straight. How are they going to come out of this one? It's all action. You were right, Jack. He didn't build this up badly.
No, you will never have a boring race in the Sunday Drivers MX-5 Cup Series. You can see Rene Ware, he's trying to move over on Louis Correa, defend his position in towards Brooklands. He does so successfully. Chaz Draycott still trying to extend that gap to Patrick Borst. I think he had a little bit of a moment there on the way through the stadium section. He's in one of the iRacing Netherlands sandwiches at the moment, so the Sancho Simsport machine has really got a very big job on his hands. He's got to decide, does he go forward and focus on trying to get to position? However, look at this, the number 41 machine of Patrick Borst really looking to apply the pressure here on the way up towards Copse Corner. He jumps out from the slipstream. Does he have the inside? He's going to be later on the brakes, throws it up the inside of Chaz Draycott. Chaz does look for the comeback. The number 30 machine for Sancho Simsport up the inside. He does have the inside line as well for the Maggots and Beckett section of the circuit on towards the back straight. And you can see the gaps on the left-hand side of your screen now. There is nothing in between anybody. Chaz Draycott still on the inside, grabs the apex, does get the position back, bouncing over the curb. However, he will now be giving the draft assistance to Patrick Borst. So position made for, what, about a corner?
Yeah, about that, I would say. I mean, the cutback that Chaz was able to put on there, his ability to point the car and the nose to dive in without understeering or oversteering was really very impressive through Copse. And I'm sure Patrick Borst will be watching that thinking, how on earth has he got that car hooked up just as nicely as he looked at there? But Rene Ware is probably actually going to be looking ahead of him thinking, okay, if Chaz and Patrick are battling, this is my opportunity to get rid of Louis behind me and get up the order. But we've had another crash, I believe, and there's a whole host of them actually. I think Bram Clays has had an incident, so let's have a look at this one.
So let's see what happened here. There's an SRL car sideways in the middle of the road. The Simtech car of Bram Class gets a big old clout from behind, ends up pointing the wrong way in the circuit, does everything he can. He stays still, holds his brakes, and then it's just an absolute domino effect from there. There's what it looks like 500,000 cars all trying to squeeze through the stadium section of the circuit. However, back up to the front there with live pictures, the number 41 of Patrick Borst in hot pursuit of Chaz Draycott, trying to defend his teammate at this point. The only thing in between Chaz Draycott and a possible podium place in a few more laps is Patrick Borst. He's got to make sure he applies that pressure, gets Chaz preoccupied with his rearview mirror. That's the only thing that he can do at this stage in the race, and the lead margin is slowly starting to whittle down again. Dan Mould in hot pursuit of the leader, the number 19. the driver from Spain, is still in the lead. How long that will last, I'm not 100% sure, because we know Dan Mould is very comfortable in his new team, really enjoying being behind the wheel of an Ignium Motorsport machine. And while he is focused on trying to get the lead off Roberto Garcia Campos, he's got to bear in mind, if he gets up there and starts battling, he's only going to lose time to Sander Borst, and that means he's only going to lose time to about 500,000 other cars as well, because you lose time to one, you can guarantee there's, 16 following along.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to give a bit of a shout out, especially in MX-5 racing, to drivers who have gained the most amount of positions since the start of the race. And at the moment, Sebastian Hayden has gained 17 positions, but he's not actually the driver who's gained the most either yet. Tyler Reeves, who is in a lovely little battle here at the sort of rear end, or the mid pack I should say. Normally when we're talking about the battle for 22nd, it's at the rear of the field, but actually it's the mid pack, which is quite astonishing to think, really, isn't it? And as you can see, he has gained a whopping 18 positions. Massive props to him. Javier Lopez, he's lost 10 positions, and you will be able to have a look why. He just gets driven into, unfortunately, into Brooklands and Luffield, and keeps getting driven into until he turned all the way around and goes off the track. And I think that was with the Andrew Lovesie, potentially. I could be wrong, but we're going to have a quick look at an Andrew Lovesie crash. So, yeah, it was the same incident.
Yeah, so I think that was also what led to the incident earlier. That's one of the fast cars go bang cars, funnily enough, sat sideways in the middle of the road. I'm not 100% sure who it was. It was Victor Oliveira. He gets a clout from the Powerhole racing machine. 2 cars into one doesn't work, and he just makes sure he holds the brake, does everything he can to avoid any further incidents, attempts to rejoin, and it's just a train of cars. We mentioned it in practice. We mentioned it in qualifying. You make a mistake, and you are going to have to let through so many cars. So one mistake, it can lose you half a field worth of positions. And now you can see this lead gap has completely dissipated. We've got Roberto Garcia Campos really under pressure now. Dan Mould pushing him down the Wellington straight in towards Brooklands. He's on the inside. However, he can't quite find the braking performance in that Mazda MX-5, but it doesn't mean he's out of the woods yet. Roberto Garcia really under pressure. We get a great camera angle here. You can see all of the battles going on from above. And now Sander Borst, he's got his hands full with Louis Correa and the Fast Cars Go Bang machine. So the number 1 entry really starting to push forward. What has happened to Dan Mould and Roberto Garcia? They're dropping down the order. Chaz Draco has been promoted into the lead. And Jacko, I think we have just had quite a sizable incident on the final corner.
I am trying to find it right now. There is those two looking at each other, but that is not ideal to find out how on earth it happened. This is Roberto Garcia Campos going off track, and by the looks of it, it's a dive up the inside by Dan Mould. Not even a dive up the inside, really. He just sort of got caught. He didn't really anticipate how much space Roberto was going to be needing to come back on the circuit, potentially, and we'll have one more look at it, and you can see, yeah, Dan's just trying his best to get up the inside, but he just didn't really leave him enough room, and that means that Roberto ended up being turned around, and unfortunately, that's both their races scuppered, I believe. But it is a good news for the likes of Chaz Draycott, Patrick Borst, Sander Borst, because they're now all in the top 3. Yeah,
absolutely. It's prime stake for the 3 that were just knocking on the door of the podium places. They've now all managed to get their hands, but it's all about who will finish the race on the top step of the podium. Well, it won't be Sander Borst, because Louis Correa gave him a little bit of a tap. He slingshotted across the roads, finds the gravel, tries to rejoin as quickly as possible, puts his foot to the floor, and gets back going again. Let's have a look here. This is Ashley Gafael having an incident. This is also through the stadium section of the circuit. There is Sander Borst, and that's just maybe slightly misread from Louis Correa. Gives him a nudge, gives him another nudge to help him towards the gravel. And there you go, Sander Borst, his opportunity to work his way through the podium places is completely dissipated. Ashley Gafael, however, he is definitely looking for a podium place now. Louis Correa, the previous offender, damage aboard the front of his car. He is now massively under pressure from Ashley Gafael, but that man there, the number 30 of Chaz Draycott, he isn't exactly in the clear with his lead, because look at Patrick Borst, he's all over the tail end of him, and it doesn't look like a massive gap, half a second between the pair of them, but half a second in these Mazda MX-5s, with the draft assistance, of course, that is very quickly going to dissipate. This is Michael Elliott now trying to make a move on Rene Ware up towards the stadium section of the circuit. The SRL car looking to the inside, and for me that's a little bit too far back, but it's never too far back for Michael Elliott. He had a huge look up the inside, and that shows the confidence and the racecraft of all the drivers on the grid. That's
exactly what I love about MX-5 racing. It looks far too far back. No, they're going to do it anyway. They're going to try it. They might as well try it. And unfortunately, we've seen it work a little bit against the favour of a few other drivers out there tonight. But Dan Mould is still in 7th place, but he's an awfully long way back. 4.5 seconds behind Michael Elliott that we're looking at here. And as you were saying, Chaz Draycott at the top of the field. in a couple of laps' time. Remember how far Roberto was ahead of everybody else, about a second and a half. Oh, that gap disappeared within 6 laps. Oh, a little bit of a wiggle on the exit there from Michael Elliott out of Copse. Just about kept it on the straight and narrow, and actually didn't lose even that much time either. He was trying to push everything to maybe get into the top 5. Maybe he can smell a podium position, because to be fair, even though the podium sitters are quite far away from those two little battle there, he wouldn't rule it out just with the fact that everybody seems to be flying off the circuit a little bit.
Yeah, it seems like that is the general rule of thumb with this race. You either get to the front or you end up taking somebody off trying. And we've had an incident for Scott Angelo once again, and he has returned to the pit lane. So I hope that isn't race over for Scott Angelo. We'll have to try and find out what happened there. But it's still Chaz Draycott leading the way, Patrick Borst chasing down. Then it's Ashley Gafail now in P3 with Louis Correa hot on his heels. So it's almost a duo of duos at this point. You can see Rene Ware and Michael Elliott is still battling away in the background. And if you've got 2 cars battling away in front of you while you're trying to fend off another car, this can very quickly become a quartet of Mazda MX-5s all fighting for what is in theory P3. So 4 cars for the final spot on the podium as it stands. And all that means is that the lead duo are going to work away. It's very, very similar to last season's race with Andrew Lovesie and Dan Mould. Of course, at that time they were teammates, but Chaz Draycott and Patrick Borst, the duo right up at the front, just starting to leave everybody else behind.
They are doing, yeah, and as you said, this quartet are starting to fall over each other a little bit. We're going to keep on board with Rene Ware at the moment as he's going to hit. Oh, he just came across. Rene just came across Michael Elliott, I fear, there, and that's actually going to let Dan Mould go back through. A huge crash, and I don't think either of them really meant to do it, but they just didn't even give each other enough room.
Yeah, it looked like possibly Rene Ware maybe started to sneak over to the right-hand side. If we have a chopper camera available, we might just be able to grab. Yeah, for me, Rene Ware, on initial looks at the incident, he maybe started to move over to the right-hand side, and as soon as you do that, you get hooked up on another car, and yeah, it's a one-way train, hard impact into the Armco barrier. He does collect the SRL car along with him. That's not what we wanted to see at all. That's not how we wanted the battle to end. And yeah, look, Michael Elliott, the innocent party for me, tried to give him the room. He still had a bit of room on the right-hand side, but it's not necessarily his priority to do so. Both cars, massive amounts of damage. Rene Ware limping the car back to the pit lane, and I think they are both bound for retirement. However, through one incident that has freed up the podium place, because we've now got Ashley Gafail and Louis Correa still battling away. 3.5 seconds back from Patrick Borst to Ashley Gafail now. So the duo for the lead and the duo for the final spot on the podium really in a world of their own, but they can't battle too much because, like you say, they're recovering Dan Mould. He's back up into P5 and he's back up charging for that podium position he lost only a few laps ago.
Yeah, but you can see he's 5.5 seconds back. In fact, you can't see. There you go. He's 5 seconds back from these two. If they start falling over each other, then there's every possibility. But there's also a lovely battle well, there's a lovely battle everywhere you look. But this, for the top 10, we can't forget, obviously, there is a mid-pack battle going on. Well, there's battles everywhere, to be fair. But this part is Roberto Garcia Campos, obviously the pole sitter, and he was in the lead for a long time, having a little bit of a bump with Sander Borst. So this could have been for the race lead, couldn't it? But actually, it's trying to get into the top 10. And Ben Hicks is amongst them. Neil Armstrong is amongst them as well. And I tell you what, if Neil can battle with these guys, it's one small step for him, one giant leap for the MX-5 series.
Absolutely, we've got a massive battle on the way. You can just tell by looking over at the left-hand side of your screen. It's painted in yellow and orange, so the gaps are very, very different. Roberto Garcia and Neil Armstrong both alongside each other at the moment. Roberto looking to remain in P10. What can he do, though? Because Neil Armstrong, he's on the inside. The number 26 machine not late enough on the brakes. The number 19 machine for Hispania Racing does remain in the top 10. An SRL car off on the grass there. I think that's Andrew Lovesie once again, not quite sticking to the track through the stadium section of the circuit. However, we've seen this battle rage on for a couple of laps in the background, and it's now great just to see how close everybody is battling for the final few spots in the top 10.
Yeah, to be fair to Andrew Lovesie, he was letting everyone past, I believe, because he is a lap down. So he was actually doing the right thing, luckily. It was much better he do that than he gets in the way of such a hot battle like this. But I have to say, if you're jumping out of the way of everyone, it must be a bit of sort of gut-wrenching for you. But as Roberto and Neil are going alongside yet again, I tell you what, they're not giving each other any room. And Roberto, although he was pole sitter by 0.3 of a second, he can't shake the likes of Neil Armstrong here, can he? And obviously Neil, he qualified in about 14th position, so he must be really pleased. He's fighting with someone of the caliber of Roberto at the moment. By the looks of it, he's just about got past, and Ben Hicks has actually joined this little battle now for the top 10. So, yeah, it was interesting to see how that one develops, but I believe Roberto's probably going to drive off a little bit now. I could be wrong, but that's how I'm going to see it.
Yeah, that could be the way it goes. Like you say, Ben Hicks is now slightly catching on to the tail end of Neil Armstrong, so that could give Roberto Garcia the break he needs there. Is Ashley Gafael for Ignium Motorsport. The number 32 machine does have Louis Correa still giving chase, and of course at this point, this is for the final spot on the podium. I don't think there's a massive chance that this duo is going to catch up to the two leaders, but if Ashley Gafael has got his teammate in hot pursuit of this battle, all he needs to do is ease it off maybe a couple of thousandths, a couple of hundredths every corner, and that is going to bring Dan Mould back in on the mix. A H20 car slowly starting to play a negative effect on this battle. I think that was the number 36 machine of Arturo de Villa, just slightly getting in the way of that battle there. Ashley Gafael has gone right over to the left-hand side of the circuit, trying to get by. Obviously, that does mean that gives Louis Correa the draft assistance of the car ahead. However, Ashley Gafael has done this before. You can tell very late on the brakes up the inside, and the H20 car getting well and truly out of the way. This battle is definitely going to stick around for the next couple of laps, because I can't see anything that's going to get in its way. Yeah,
exactly. And we've got 11 laps to enjoy it as well. Just a little shoot down towards the back end as well. Pedro Marimon, he's actually lunging up the inside of Stephen Orell in the Holy Cow Racing. I'm sure you probably saw that one coming from a long way back, but always going for a look at the inside there. That was a very fast amount of apex speed that he was gaining, and maybe scuppered him a little bit on the exit, but just about keeping it all nice and calm at the moment going towards Copse. But like I said, there is battles everywhere you look on this circuit right now, and it's brilliant to see as well. Stephen Orell going up the inside now into Copse. No, he cuts back, goes for the slightly safer line, makes sure that he's actually nailing his apexes here. He's got a long way to go, 10 laps to go in fact, before we see out the rest of this race. And he knows that potentially being in the right track position at the right time on the final lap is more important than being ahead right now.
Yeah, like you say, you refer back to that mini race at Thruxton a couple of years ago, and it's all about where you're placed on the final lap. And is that what Patrick Borst has got in the back of his mind? He's been chasing Chaz for the previous 16 laps, what it feels like anyway. So is he just more than happy sitting on, staying behind, assessing where Chaz is maybe slightly slower than himself? He has the full draft assistance that he needs. It's just, can he hook the lap up? Can he get that position made cleanly on the final few laps? We've only got 10 laps of the race remaining now. Of course, the one we're on, and then 9 more. Chaz runs very wide on the exit of turn 1. What can he do to get back across? He does give Patrick Borst very little room to maneuver. 180 Ks knocking on the door of in towards the maggot section of the circuit. Chaz does hook up the inside. Patrick Borst washes a little bit wide. He will have the draft assistance once again on the Wellington straight. Let's see what happens here. This is an absolutely great camera angle. You can see just how close they will get. He's reeling him in very slowly. That Simply Race logo on the tail end of Chaz's car getting ever bigger. Now in towards Brooklands. Chaz just later on the brakes cuts across the nose and position secured. And normally you'd say, oh, that's the position secured for another lap. Well, it's secured for about another corner, because you can see Chaz takes a very different line to Patrick Borst in there. The car almost bogging down in third gear, but he does get the drive off the corner, and Patrick Borst once again in exactly the same position he was, 1 minute and 6 seconds ago.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? You think, oh, maybe I've got somewhere, maybe I'm sort of catching the driver in front, I know where I'm faster, they've made a mistake, XYZ, and all of a sudden you come around the next lap, because it's such a short lap, and we're back again square one. So, yeah, I'm sure Patrick Borst will have a little bit of trick up his sleeve. You know, I think he was coming out the slipstream a touch early, if you ask me, going towards Brooklands in front of the BRDC club. But as you say, at the end of the race, he'll potentially have that in his mind. Maybe he'll go a bit longer, go right up to the gearbox of Chaz, and then make a late lunge. He's trying the cut back now, trying a different line through Maggots and Beckett's. Is it going to work out for him? No, he seems to be, if anything, a little further back, as Louis Correa and Ashley Gafael are still falling over each other almost. Louis trying to maybe, see, this is what I mean, he's going for the slipstream a bit longer. As he hits the brakes, he's not going for that lunge just yet, though. He's sort of taking his time a little bit. So this is good driving from all around, really, because the last thing we want to see is big lunges and big hits.
Yeah, we don't want to see any further incidents. We've seen our fair share of just the nature of this racing, and it's just going to happen. Like you said earlier, that the cars are so evenly matched. It's a lot of it is driver talent and how they control the car throughout the 26 laps. It's great being quick over one lap. You'll be amazing in qualifying, but like I said earlier, it's not quite an endurance race, but it's getting very close to for these Mazda MX-5s. They don't tend to race for such long periods, so if you're consistent throughout, if you can post 106 after 106 throughout all 26 laps, you should stand yourself in good stead. Roberto Garcia having a little look up the inside there of Iordanin Svetanov, and it's only going to get closer. He has the draft assistance on the exit of Copse Corner in towards Maggots now at the very hard braking zone in towards the right-hander. Clip the apex at the midpoint of the corner and then look for the exit curb. All the drivers managing to use that and a little bit more, and now it's almost 5 cars all chasing down Sander Borst for 7th place, and they've all got draft assistance from Sander as well. So he's got quite the job on his hands to try and keep everybody behind. Roberto Garcia still hot on the heels of Iordanin Svetanov. He has a little look up the inside. He has a big old look up the inside as a correction. There you go. Up into P8. Iordanin Svetanov now left vulnerable to Joseph Kibbeney, the Simtech Racing silver driver, and Neil Armstrong following along as well. And you can see as well Ben Hicks trying to get in on the mix in the background. So while we've still got 7 laps of the race remaining, the positions will not be decided until we cross the line for the final time.
Yeah, I think Svetanov, I don't know whether he let him through there or whether he made a mistake looking and driving in his mirrors, because the last thing you want to do when you've got a quick driver behind you is start driving in your mirrors. As soon as you do that, you're out, you just miss your braking zones, you're overthinking things. Really, you just need to nail your braking zones, nail your apexes, and see how well that takes you, basically. Matt Tempest and Dan Mould then. Dan Mould has gotten through. He's now into the top 5 yet again, and I'm sure he'll be looking at the likes of Louis Correa and Ashley Gafford, but I think we may run out of laps. We've only got about 6-7 minutes left, as we've only got about 6 laps left.
Yeah, so the time really starting to fall away now. We do have a change for the lead. Patrick Borst right up at the pointy end of the order now. Chaz Draycott giving chase. We might be able to see a replay of this. So this is on the way into Brooklands, and he decides he's stay behind for far too many laps now. Commits to the corner. Chaz Draycott, he is absolutely helpless at that point. If he were to turn in, there'd be an incident. Has a little look to try and sneak up the inside, but nothing comes of that. And for the moment, Patrick Borst is now in 2nd place. So they've changed positions once again in towards Copse Corner, and he's already got quite a nice gap as Chaz. 6/10 the difference between the pair of them. Does he just commit to Copse Corner? He's had the draft assistance all the way along. He was demoted into P2 a couple of corners ago and says, right, I ain't staying there for longer than I have to. Up the inside, the number 30 machine, back up to the front. Absolutely great racing between the pair of them.
Yeah, it's a shame, really, because we missed that overtake by mere hundredths of a second, I believe, as we were watching it live. But we did get the replay, so that's okay. And as we go down towards where we saw Patrick overtake Chaz into Brooklands in front of the BRDC, he is, as you can see, quite a fair way back. Half a second the gap now. So although Patrick was probably biding his time and thought, you know what, now is the time to attack Chaz, make sure, make him make mistakes maybe. Chaz just responded with that sort of expertly, really, and just thought, okay, you can have that. I'm going to get the better run. I'll get the slipstream and straight up back up the inside. No messing about. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he didn't want to stay in 2nd place. He made his intentions known. Iordanin Svetanov has had a big old hit by the looks of it. He's dropping down the order now, down into P12. Make that, he's even further, P15. So he is evidently come to some sort of strife. Does the Simtech car give him a tap? Yes, it does. Once again, through the final corner, the cars stick together. As we've seen so many times, they have a little bit of a moment just staring into each other's eyes passionately. However, that does mean Iordanin Svetanov has dropped right the way down the order. So here we go again, just catches the tail end of the corner. There is Neil Armstrong getting almost centre space with that hit. He does get back going again, and once again we've seen another Mazda MX-5 with a missing wheel. As Iordanin Svetanov, I really hope there is a Mazda parts dealership somewhere nearby, because we're going to need it. Ashley Gaffale now looking up or trying to hold on around the outside, but that does mean Louis Correa has got up the inside. He's got the final spot on the podium at a crucial point in the race. Only 4 laps of the race remaining, and we do have a change for the final spot on the podium. What can Ashley Gaffale do in response to that change? Chaz Draycott still up at the front. The gap is slowly starting to come down now. Half a second just under between himself and Patrick Borst. And this race, like I said earlier, it's not going to be settled until we get the checkered flag.
It isn't indeed, yeah, as I think that is Gafall on the outside now. Correa going back up the inside for 3rd place. And there's an awful lot of activity in the chat saying hello from the Armstrong community and the Armstrong sort of family and all that sort of thing. Unfortunately, Armstrong was involved in that incident I only showed about 20 seconds ago, so really good for them. But on the looks of it at the moment, Gafall is really fighting with Correa. And I tell you what, these guys will be having an absolute blast, won't they? It'll be really fun for these guys in the actual car. I'm sure they'd probably wanted a bit of an easier race for the podium, but at the end of the day, they do race for fun, and I'm sure this is very enjoyable as long as it all keeps clean.
Yeah, that's all we've got to hope for. Ashley Gafall now back up the inside, reverse of what happened only 1 lap ago. So Ashley Gafall now back up into the podium places. Louis Correa still giving chase in the background, I think, almost halfway around the circuit. We've got Victor Oliveira and Robert van den Heuvel changing positions. And I'm just looking over at the timing screen on the left-hand side. We've got orange car after orange car after orange car. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, that means there's under half a second between the pair of them. So everywhere you look on circuit, there's going to be some sort of on-track action. I think the closest cars are the ones we're looking at the moment. Only 2 tenths separating the pair of them. Then we go down to P12 and you've got Jason Guara, Neil Armstrong and Xavier Lopez all battling away for what is P10 overall. So the top 10 still not quite settled as of yet. There they are up the road. A bit of daylight between the pair of them. Neil Armstrong preoccupied with the H20 machine. Xavier Lopez up the inside and does get that position made up into P11 now, giving chase to Jason Guara, the Simtech racing machine. He's gained 17 places, not half as impressive as Michael Kamirik for iRacing Netherlands. 26 places gained, and seeing just from the first couple of laps how competitive this field is, to gain 26 places, getting through all of the chaos, to do that, that's insane, and his car still looks pristine as we go on to the final 2 laps of the race.
Imagine making up 26 places in a race and you're still only in 18th place. That is, I mean, that is pretty stunning statistics, isn't it, really, to be honest? But he's obviously done a brilliant job. And like you said, he's actually got a clean car, which seems to be a little bit rare looking up and down the order now. There's a few cars being laps X, Y, Z. But you're right, he might well make it. Another one if he can make it up the inside here.
Yeah, he does have a little look up the inside there.
I think that's a back mark, actually.
Get it done cleanly. He had a little look, and yeah, like you said, that might just be one of
Jean-Louis Marguet, one. So
yeah, it runs very wide on the exit of the corner, does Jean-Louis Marguet. However, that is a back marker dispersed off. Here is Roberto Garcia trying to put one over on the number 40 machine of Sander Borst round the outside. Maybe a bit of door-to-door contact there. And Roberto Garcia, as per the usual, he's got a bit of damage on the right front, missing the wing mirror. That seems to be one of the trademark points of this championship. If you finish with both your wing mirrors, you haven't done it properly. And the number 19, he's on the inside trying to defend. What can Roberto do? Later on the brakes, tries to get the lock piled on, make sure he doesn't go deep, grabs the apex and continues on. And Louis Correa and Ashley Gafall still getting closer and closer together as well as we go on to the final lap of the race. Chaz Draycott still in the lead, 6 tenths separating himself from Patrick Borst. He does have traffic up the road. Neil Armstrong, I think, is one of them. So for the moment, Chaz is looking good for the first couple of sectors. However, does he end up with a change of position in the final few corners? This is Ashley Gafall, still Louis Correa giving chase, going through towards turn 1 and the final lap of the race. These positions still undecided. I've got a feeling that those cars might as well position. Chaz Draycott making a meal of some of the traffic. There's a car off. I think that's Jean-Louis Marguet there. He's now trying to get past Neil Armstrong, is Chaz Draycott, and he's managed to extend that gap up to 8.5 tenths of a second, pushing 9 tenths of a second now. So Chaz clearly slightly more economic through the traffic.
Yeah, indeed. It's a really tough moment to actually catch all this traffic, isn't it? Because obviously these drivers won't want to get in the way, but they may inadvertently get in the way. As almost Neil Armstrong was trying to hold it around the outside. Another car coming on late round Brooklands. There's been a whole host of incidents, but by the looks of it, Chaz Draycott's gonna do this.
It looks like that is going to be the way. So round 1 of 2021 Sunday Drivers MX Cup Series is a delight to say it, is won by Chaz Draycott and Sancho Simsport, the number 30 machine, only out of the lead for what, a lap and a half at the start. Managed to get in front after Dan Mould had a slight bit of contact with Roberto Garcia, hounded to the line by Patrick Borst, the number 41 machine. I'll take my hat off to you, so what a brilliant race. Ashley Gafall does manage to defend the final spot on the podium from Louis Correa, and everybody slowing down as they cross the line now. It feels weird to see them go so slowly. You think when they're racing door to door, they're probably breaking the sound barrier. Well, that's what it looks like anyway. And now they're all slowed down. It looks slightly more tame. That Tempest, you can see there, the Simtech car, more than happy to have a little bit of a, well, I was going to say a break, but clearly Not quite happy with that, is Roberto Garcia.
No, he prefers using the Armco as a brake by the looks of that there. But what a race we just had, to be fair. I mean, obviously, Chaz Draycott, at the end, he got into the race lead. And by the time he sort of he bedded himself in, he had a bit of trouble with Patrick Borst, but at the end of the day, he did expertly, didn't he? As soon as Patrick Borst piled the pressure on, Chaz just entered into Copse and was like, no, thank you, I'll take that back. But it was a stunning race all around. Like you said, Michael Kamarick, he ended up in 18th with 26 places gained. Stunning drive from him. And most of the drives that we saw today, Jack, were very entertaining as well. And something that I'm very excited to be a part of going forward, hopefully. And with any luck, everybody enjoyed themselves as well, because that's the main thing.
Yeah, it's just been a brilliant start to the season, and I'm trying to make sure I've got enough defences, because I'm guessing I'm going to get some rocks hurled at me at the moment. But I've got to say that one round probably outdid the entirety of last season. 44 car grid and all of that action. A few little incidents, as was expected with such a big grid. However, that was a great race to watch, and we now have results up on screen for you. By 1 full second, Chaz Draycott does take the win and the top step of the podium for the first round of the season here at Silverstone. Patrick Borst, what a drive. He put up with all the pressure around him. He had his teammate constantly chasing him. He had a little bit of attention from Chaz for about a corner when he was in the lead, but Chaz, sadly for Patrick Borst, but very happily for Chaz, does get back in front. Ashley Gaffale rounds out the podium. Louis Correa in 4th. Dan Mould does get back up to 5th. Matt Tempest in 6th. Roberto Garcia, pole sitter, race leader for a short amount of time, does recover back up to P7. Sander Borst in P8. Ben Hicks in P9, and Jason Guerra rounds out your top 10. 11th was Xavier Lopez. Then it's Neil Armstrong, Pedro Marimon, Calais Cavisto, Stephen Orell in 15th, Sander Ware in 16th, 17th was Joseph Kivini, and 18th, biggest mover in the field, 26 places gained at the line, Michael Kamarick. That was a brilliant drive from the number 42 machine. And then it's Peter Reid in 19th, Robert van den Heuvel in 20th, Victor Oliveira 21st, Dave Geddes, the sole Canadian driver on the grid, rounds out your top 22. Then it's Martin Pereiro in 23rd. 24th was Alvaro Rodriguez. Tyler Reeves in 25th. Rob Jackson, Timo Paya, Mark Armstrong, bringing all of his fans with him in towards the chat. And then the final few finishes were Sven Dalemans, Amanullah Bacchus, Rene Ware, Mackenzie Mann, Jordan Svetanov after quite a sizable incident a few laps from the end. Then it's James Austin. Michael Ellickley showing off his talent this evening with some very, very late moves. Harry Bowen in 36th, Scotty Angelo in 37th, Arturo De Villa in 38th, and I think we've just got a couple more. There you go. Sebastian Hain 39th, Jean-Louis Mauger in 40th, John Brown 41st, Andrew Lovesie 42nd, Bram Class in 43rd, and Enrico Puttenstein I don't think make it to the grid, but to hear 43rd on the results, it shows you that it was one very, very big grid and one hell of a race. I've got to say, if I could do it all over again, I would.
Well, with any luck, we'll do it all over again in a couple of weeks' time, won't we? Hopefully these guys stick around for the racing, and will stick around to give us sort of more action-packed sort of content as well, really. And I believe, Jack, you got a few drivers waiting in the interview room as well to have a chat to. I'll let you have a pick of who you want to have a speak to while I find some replays.
All right, I think we're going to go the reverse way around the podium. We don't have Patrick Borst available to us in second. However, in third place, Ashley Gaffale, welcome to the commentary box. That was a busy old race for you by the looks of it, constantly being chased by Louis Correa, but eventually, come the end of the race, you came out on top.
Yeah, how's it going, guys? Yeah, it was an enjoyable little race, actually. Very busy and hectic, and I think I was just lucky, really. Managed to miss some of the carnage. But yeah, Luis kept me very busy.
Yeah, it looked like you couldn't really catch a breath, and obviously you had you had a couple of moments at the start. You can see pushing the limits. All of the drivers evidently trying to get every ounce of performance out of the car. Just explain to us and try and almost put it into perspective the challenges you face in this car, because it's not got the most amount of power, but I've seen that it's quite easy to get a kick of oversteer in this car. As long as you're careful on the throttle, you tend to avoid that. But you're racing almost 3 wide into every corner, pushing each other around with a bit of damage possibly as well. It must be quite a busy job.
Yeah, it's completely the opposite of what I'm used to racing, which is the Audi TCR. But yeah, the Mazda's still a brilliant little car. You just got to be very smooth with it and literally just keep the speed, the revs up all the time. Otherwise, like you say, if you drop off, like off the throttle, that's it. Your speed just dies. You disappear. and everyone would be flying past you.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you commonly race the Audi TCR, and of course you race with your teammate in the Audi TCR, new teammate Dan Mould at Ignium Motorsport. He was on a run for the front today, and I thought if it got to the point you could almost start to back Louis up into Dan Mould. Was that something that crossed your mind, or was it just let's try and keep Louis behind before we start to think about team tactics? What was going through your head when you had Louis an inch away from your rear bumper?
Yeah, Dan's obviously very, as you know, Dan's very quick in pretty much any car he seems to get in. And obviously had that, I think he had a bit of an incident, so that he dropped behind us. To be honest, to start with, I weren't really thinking about him. I wanted to try and secure a podium myself. Obviously Dan had a good run last year, so I want to try and make a good impression this year. But then as it was getting towards the end, I couldn't really shake Luis, and I knew Dan was sort of catching as well, but I didn't want to jeopardise my podium, to be honest. So yeah, unfortunately Dan just had to stick with his fifth.
Well, it was a great race to watch, and of course it left so much up in the air. And heading into round 2, I can't wait to see what it's going to be like. And hopefully, we see some on-track action with you and your teammate. It would be interesting to see who comes out on top of that one. But before we let you go, anybody you'd like to thank or shout out?
Obviously, big thanks to you guys, the commentary, and the team Ignium, with Paul King sorting out our liveries. It's a great little team and I'm enjoying it.
Well, it was great to see the livery on show this evening. Once again, a massive well done for the podium, and we hope to see you in, 3 weeks' time?
Yeah, thanks. Cheers.
That was Ashley Gaffale there, P3 finisher in the number 32 Ignium Motorsport machine. We've only got one more driver to bring in, Jacko, and I'm going to leave him all to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe it will be the main man. He's got himself muted at the moment, but race winner. And usually an SRW commentator, as pretty much everybody I'm sure who is watching this will know, Chaz Draycott. And Chaz, you must be very pleased with that. It wasn't as easy as maybe you were making out to us on the chat just before, but you must be very pleased with it.
I'm over the moon. I was just saying then to the stream that I've got going on, you know, best way to start a new campaign is a race win. I didn't expect it from 5th because I know how quick Roberto and Dan are. So to get 3rd place and then them instantly come together was a dream come true, really. But I tell you what, I want to say hats off to Patrick Borst in that one because he kept me honest. He really kept me honest. I had to defend a few times and his pace was good throughout. But the slipstream just kept him there. I could gradually chip away and just take a few tenths off him here and there. But yeah, that was it was tough, that, definitely.
Yeah, well, Jack was saying about your epic battles between yourself and Dan Mould. You didn't really have that much of a battle with Dan Mould, did you, in that one? It was more the two Borsts, and they pushed you. Were you expecting that going into the championship then? Or was it a case of you expecting Dan Mould to be there? Roberto sort of maybe turned up and he's giving you a bit of shock. What was the thinking towards the drivers around the top 5? Because the top 5 really were in a sort of different pace of their own compared to the rest of the field, but obviously coming together meant that the rest of the field sort of caught up a little bit.
Yeah, the two Borsts were very quick. I wasn't really expecting that from them. I think they did the last round at Alton last season, and they didn't seem to have that much pace then. I just remember seeing the iRacing Netherlands livery. But yeah, Roberto's probably on pace, the quickest guy out there, but he's just had his inconsistencies here and there. How he did a 106.1 in quali, I don't know how he did that. That was unbelievable. But around here, we knew it was going to be a bit of a slipstream fest, so it was all about making sure that we stay with him near the front. I'm watching it back on my stream now, but I actually got a cone attached to the front of my car on the end of lap 2, I think it was, and it lost me loads of pace in a straight line, so I had to shake it off and then stay ahead of Sander and Patrick again. But yeah, that was it was hard work, but I think without that incident, I don't think I would have won that.
Nah, it definitely looked like an interesting battle. You're obviously in it for the long run now, aren't you? You're doing the entire season. I'm guessing you're hoping for more on-track battles like that, because at the end of the day, I know you'd like to win, and it would be nice to win easily and all that sort of thing, but at the end of the day, it's all about enjoying the racing, isn't it? And having more competitive cars around you must mean that you're always going to get a more interesting race. Is that what you signed up for?
Oh, yeah. I mean, after Alton, I got invited to do Alton simply because the championship had been wrapped up, and I'd been commentating on it all season. And Sander thought, yeah, why not? Chuck him in, see how he does. And yeah, I had the greatest race I've ever had on iRacing with Dan Mould, and I know just how much fun these cars are. These cars are to race, and yeah, more of the same, please. But yeah, I mean, as much as that may have not looked like the most exciting battle outside between me and Patrick, but it was honestly really, really entertaining from where I was. You know, it was scary watching the time go up and then come back down again in the slipstream. It was great.
Yeah, one last little bit about the race, obviously, because the boss got past you, didn't he? Get in front of the BRDC section, and then you were able to just get past him in cops. Was that something you were desperate to do early on, or was it just the opportunity was there, you didn't fancy sitting behind him? Talk us through that sort of mentality.
Well, I said to... well, I don't even know if I said it out loud or not, but my mate Dan McCauley was spotting for me, and he did an epic job tonight, by the way, so props to Dan. But I wasn't going to go for it straight away. I was just going to put my nose down the inside and then brake earlier than him. But I got that much of a run, I just thought, oh, well, stuff it, we're here now, we may as well. When in Rome and all that. Chucked it down the inside, managed to make it stick without making any contact. And I truly did not expect that to pay off, but he had me good and proper just before that. So, yeah, fair play to him. He kept it clean, and that's what's best about it.
Well, one last tough question that I'm going to throw at you. Would you rather be commentating or driving tonight, then? Which one would it be?
I'm sweating a lot more from driving.
I'm sweating a lot more from commentating, to be honest.
Well, there's always a lot to look at in this series. I'd say it's a little bit more fun driving, to be honest. It's a great little series, this. Really, well, I say little, you know, massive grid now, which is awesome for the guys. But yeah, I'd say definitely driving is a hell of a lot of fun. Yeah,
absolutely. 44 cars, can't go wrong. Well, you know the drill, Chaz. Is anybody you'd like to give a quick shout out to before we say goodnight?
Yes, Silverstone Composites, Zansho Simsport's main sponsor. It's their home race tonight, obviously being based at Silverstone. So that one's for them tonight. That was proper good fun, and I hope the guys, if they do see it, will enjoy watching that one back and seeing the Zansho Simsport MX-5 across the line. Simply Race as well, and all of the lads in Zansho. They've been really supportive of late, and I've got a bit more involved in the team. And yeah, they gave me the chance to paint that little MX-5 myself, and I think it looks pretty good out there. So yeah, hats off to the boys, and Dan as well, and everybody in the Chaz Draycott Media Discord as well that's watching. I know there's a couple of them in there, so hats off to them a lot as well.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to say good night to you, Chaz. But congratulations on the race win. First race of the season. Always nice to get off to a tasty win. Top step of the podium for you. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks very much, boys. Have a good night.
And that was Chaz Draycott, Jack. And I believe we don't have any more drivers in the interview waiting room. So it's probably about time that we sum up the evening.
Yeah, it's such a shame that it's already come to an end, and it's a 3-week wait. It was like it last season. It's like it this season. I say that, I always used to say it's far too long. It's far too long. But if you did it every week or every 2 weeks, I think it would get almost a bit too repetitive. Not that you could ever get bored of this, but the 3 weeks, it adds the tension. It adds the little bit of chit chat going around the paddock. Such a huge paddock, much like Chaz said. So there's so much tension in the build up to the event. It just makes it its own thing. Like there's nothing else you can relate it to in sim racing, which I think it just makes Sunday drivers something else. And I will always look forward to it. 3 weeks from now, on the 31st, I believe, we go to Daytona. So that's going to be an absolutely amazing race. And of course, that will bring in another new aspect of racing in these Master MX-5s. We will still have the draft assistance, but you're going to be reaching the top of the rev range. Fuel management, possibly tyre management, shouldn't be such a major issue. But that's going to just be a completely different race, as it will be every single round. And like I say, it's such a shame that we've wrapped up the evening already. Hopefully, the next 3 weeks goes as quickly as possible, because I cannot wait for round 2.
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to say good night now then. And yeah, we'll be back in 3 weeks' time. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in a bit.